and good afternoon, everybody. Brian, next slide, please. Thank you. And the next one. Great, perfect. Okay, like you, in West Philadelphia, I have been sat pretty much in my home office for the last 15 months, and I made my first business trip to Florida last week, almost as if COVID had never happened. I just thought I'd let you know that. But one of the things that I've spent my time doing in that 15-month period is speaking a lot to the world of architects, to corporate real estate, and especially to a lot of enterprise customers around the world about what the impact of COVID has been and what their thoughts are about not only return to office, but what the future of work is going to look like. And after all of those discussions and all of that research, I can report back one simple thing: no one knows. So if you are in a situation where you're not yet certain about what it's going to look like or how it's going to shape out, and you're not really sure about how to either get people back or what it's going to look like in the future, don't worry, because we're all in the same boat. But should there be a single answer to the life, universe, and everything, it might be 42. Now, why 42? Well, obviously there's the hitchhiker reference, but let's move on from that. The corporate real estate world, historically pre-COVID, had a planning assumption that about 70% of the employee base would go into an office 5 days a week, 9 to 5. And that was a planning assumption that was used to size the building, to fit out the floor plan, and decide how many conference rooms they would need. Post-pandemic, or post-vaccine, I should say, and everyone starts to return, the planning assumption is now looking at about 60% of the 70%. And if you do your sums, you'll work out that that means 42%. And what that means is, for the first time in our memory of the modern workplace as we know it, the vast majority, or the majority of our employees are not all going to be in the office all at the same time. Now, that does, as Peter was referring to, indicate that it's going to be a hybrid world, but we're going to actually have to start thinking about what does that mean as far as how do we plan and actually support work and our employees in the best possible way, because everything that we've done prior to this period has not been based on that principle. Now, again, the COVID pandemic has really just highlighted and accelerated the move we're in. And as Peter's mentioned, something has been going on for a number of years. This shouldn't have actually been a surprise that we've been doing a digital transformation. But the one thing that this last 15 months has done is it's created almost like a universal experiment when all organizations as well as people have gone through an event all at the same time. And there's been a number of realizations that we've actually had to come to. And so I think whilst we're thinking about what that means as far as how do we get people back to the office, and I'm going to talk about that in a little bit, we also need to actually say, well, what does that mean as far as work itself? And so I just want to explore what we've learned so far. So next slide, please. So we've talked about hybrid work and the workplace. And what's been really fascinating is that most people are actually, who've been focused on place, are now shifting their attention to purpose. And what we're beginning to realize when we start to not only interview employees, but also business leaders, is when you say, well, why would somebody come back into an office now? Is it that they need to sit down and do focus work when they can actually do that at home and not have the commute and have work-life balance? Or what are the actual activities that we really need to create an opportunity for people to engage in? And so we're now focused very much on the new workplace purpose and not necessarily place. So place becomes something that needs to adapt and change to support purpose, not the other way around. And the purpose really is centered around these things. So learning and socializing, we're all missing that human connection, that ability to be able to spend time with our fellow human beings. That's really important. The culture that we have within our organization, it's actually being quite strained, as that statistic that Peter shared about 47% of employees may be looking for another job. Employee engagement has been a real problem. Health and well-being. Number one priority for most leaders in businesses right now is when our employees come back, we need to look after them better, and we need to create an environment that encourages people not only to be productive, but how they can thrive within the organization and grow, and also connected to the brand of the organization. Who are we as an organization moving forward? And so the workplace itself is not only going to be reconfigured just to accommodate maybe less people coming in all the time. The actual spaces that we create and the technology that supports them is going to be doing different things. And it's going to be very much focused on these kind of activities supporting purpose. And we also have to accept the fact that work is going to happen in the office, at home, or anywhere people are. And we need to figure out the balance of how we support that particular activity. Next slide. I mentioned that we've been doing a lot of research, and one of the most valuable pieces is actually spending time with a lot of our large global enterprise customers. And what I'm sharing with you now, thankfully, is my final slide, but I just wanted to share with you some perspectives from some CIOs we conducted a number of roundtable CEOs from 100 organizations, and Frost actually helped to facilitate that meeting and also summarize the real conclusions. So for those who are technology oriented listening right now, then here are the conclusions that Frost and Sullivan came out with. And I think it's interesting to look behind these particular words and what it actually means. So first of all, the future of workplace. The major conclusion for these CIOs, in other words, what are they thinking about and what are they planning for, is they now need to think about workplace as borderless. And most IT thinking has been very much centered around the workplace itself, and then how do we connect people remotely when they are needed, when they need to. It hasn't necessarily been organized on people can work wherever they are. And there's whole implications for how we organize our networks and security, how we provide access, what is the experience that people have, not only when they're in the office, but what is their experience when they're joining remotely as well. So what we're seeing as a consequence of this is a dramatic acceleration of unified communications. So whether it's Microsoft Teams or whether it's Cisco or Zoom or Google, massive acceleration towards cloud and how that's going to support that borderless workplace. Secondly, meeting equity. And if you think about the experience you have now, I'm full head and shoulders, hopefully good quality audio and video. But when we return back to the office in hybrid mode, that's not the experience we necessarily have with people in conference rooms, with people joining remotely. So we need to think about how we level the playing field. Finally, interop. Another thing happened. It's not just about how do we interact with our employees that's changed. It's also how do we interact with our customers and our suppliers and vendors. And so therefore, although we can build and develop these advanced unified communications and collaboration internally, we also need to interoperate with the rest of the world. And most organizations don't have a very robust interoperability plan. And finally, and most importantly, the employee experience. How do we actually enable our people to be able to engage in this hybrid model and actually get motivated and not get fatigued as we all have been over this last 15-month period? I'm going to summarize by just saying things have happened in 3 phases. First of all, the 15 months that we've had, and some of us are still in it, we've been calling survival mode. And we've pretty much learned a lot about what it took to survive. And we're taking those lessons forward. The second phase, we've been calling MacGyver mode. For some of you who might remember the TV show with MacGyver, making stuff out of balls of string and safety pins, but that's what it's going to be like over the next 9 months. So, don't worry, it is going to be a case of how we get people back to work, of how do we piece these things together that we already have, maybe adding some things. But the real opportunity and the real digital transformation is what we call reset mode, very much consistent with the World Economic Forum Great Reset. And this is the point where we really have to accelerate towards what the future is going to be and really embrace these digital technologies, as well as looking after our employees and become human in the way that we design moving forward. And that, Peter, is all I had to share right now. So back to